Listen carefully. The dreaded click. There's only one thing worse than that click, and that is a bang and a wounded animal. As hunters, we want to avoid that. So in this video, I'll share a memorable checklist, AMP, so you can prep for the shot, avoid missing opportunities and avoid wounding animals. Of all the opportunities I can think of for missing an opportunity to shoot, there's probably a few of them that I'm willing to accept. And if hard pressed, I might acknowledge that occasionally, due to things out of your control, you'll end up wounding an animal. However, the mistakes we're going to talk about in this video are nowhere near any of those lists. I notice here one operator who's also a hunter. Once upon a time when he was hunting, he had to flank a group of deer and he forgot to adjust his sights. Fortunately, the difference between the two positions was so great that there was no harm done. But the lesson of the story is that if the pros can mess up this kind of stuff, you can do it too. I can do it too. And I definitely gotten in a similar kind of trouble, which I'll share later. Hunting is in many ways a mental game, but it doesn't matter if your mind is switched on, if your rifle is switched off. It doesn't matter if your mind is switched on, if your rifle is switched off. And by switched off, I mean not set on the right settings, not ready for the shot. So let's take a page out of the books, the pro shoes. Fighter pilot, airline pilots are all highly skilled, highly trained individuals. They still use checklists for the important stuff. So don't be a pilot who wings it. Use a checklist. And here's a checklist I use to prep the shot. I call it AMP. AMP, and I remember it as avoid missing prey. If, like me, you can dial your scope turrets, you will end up dialing it. And if, when you take the shot, they are on the wrong setting, you're going to wound the animal, unless you are very lucky. So what I'm talking about here is primarily bullet drop, because wind drift is very advanced marksmanship skills. And in all its simplicity, this check means that you make sure that your scope is dialed in on the correct distance or your maximum point blank range. So that's why in AMP, your pre-shot checklist, A stands for adjustments. If you can dial it, check it's dialed right. Avoid missing prey. Everybody loves high magnification, but it is much easier to find your target, find that animal, if your scope is set on a low setting. If your scope is set on high, you end up hunting, no pun intended, for the animal. And that way you can lose valuable seconds. Sure, you can always zoom in when you found it, but start on low setting. There are other reasons that you want to go towards the lower end of your scope settings, but I'll cover that another time. So in your shot prep checklist, M stands for magnification. Make sure you set on low. Avoid missing prey. AMP is the first step in my Raptor strafer model for taking the perfect shot. The next step is B for build your position, where you use the ASBI model. I'll cover these steps in more videos, but if you want to check them out now, you can see the PDF guide I've created. No sign up required. Link in the description. Do you remember the dreaded click? Not a faulty cartridge, but no cartridge in the chamber. In many cases, it's good practice to hunt with the bolt closed on an empty chamber for safety reasons. But if you do that, of course, you've got to make sure that you load at one so you're ready for the shot. I once went from hero to zero after a very intense, very careful stalk from a fallow doe. I got that click and I felt pretty stupid. At least it wasn't in front of a hunting guide or hunting buddy, and I was lucky enough that I could reload, take the shot, and end the morning as I intended it. But that wasn't by design, it was by luck. And we want to flip those two. So in your shot prep checklist, AMP, P stands for press check. Move the bolt far enough back, you can see that you have a round in the chamber. Avoid missing prey. To avoid the dreaded click, to avoid wounding animals, use this pre-shot checklist. AMP, A for adjustments, check your scope adjustments, dialed in right. M for magnification, set it on low, so you don't have to hunt for the animal. And P for press check, so you're sure that you've chambered a cartridge. A and P, avoid missing prey. I don't know about you, but I don't like wasting hunting time. I don't like missing opportunities and making mistakes. So I researched all the mistakes that hunters make to know what to avoid. And obviously, the volume was high. So I boiled it all down and created a 6-part mental model to help me apply all these findings. If you want to avoid making mistakes when hunting, then check out this video on the 6 worst mistakes that hunters make, the 6 archetypes, and my mental model that I refer to as the 6 types of overload. Click here to watch the video.